We're going to have Matt Ryan join the show here shortly to talk about all the QB performances over the weekend, give his quarterback of the week. But me and Kyle are going to start talking about what we saw last night in one of the weirdest Sunday night football games I can remember between two supposedly of the best teams in football, right? I mean, The Lions right now, second best record in the NFL. The Texans still atop the AFC South. But 5 picks from Jared Goff, 2 picks from CJ Stroud, when they mattered most, too. Are we having any big takeaways from Sunday Night Football, or was this just kind of a wacky one-off kind of game?
Well, I could totally go out and say that CJ Stroud got his groove back. I know he threw some interceptions in that game, but it looked to be at the beginning of the game that everything was just kind of coming easy to CJ Stroud, and they mixed some stuff up at the line of scrimmage with their offensive line, the unit they had out there, and it was obvious that he was more comfortable. I was expecting Nico Collins to be out there for CJ Stroud in this matchup. He wasn't, nor was Zadarius Smith, who was enjoying his simulated bye week thanks to Dan Campbell. But CJ Stroud looked really good, efficient. He was in his bag early. He had the Lions on their heels defensively. And on the other side of the ball, you look at the way the Lions started that football game. They're used to going out and scoring and playing with the lead. They weren't able to do that. A couple of those tip balls, some pressure on Jared Goff, getting that hand right in there on the football, bounced the Houston Texans' way. Next thing you know, you're in the hole. Dan Campbell obviously had a great halftime speech to his team because they came out firing on all cylinders. It was fun to watch.
Let's bring in Matt Ryan to get his thoughts. Matt, what did you see last night from Stroud, and what did you see from Goff?
Yeah, I mean, I saw CJ Stroud play as well as he can in the first half. And in the second half, really the touchdown in the end zone is the only, or the interception, in the end zone is the only one I really look at and say, I don't love that one. Put that to the back pylon. But thought he did some nice things. I mean, it was a matchup of two good teams, right? Two good teams going at it. I know we have all the turnovers. That's kind of atypical. But I love the competitiveness of the Lions. What's scary for the rest of the NFL is the fact that the Lions can win ball games, and not be at their best, and they find a way. So the resiliency, the toughness, the grit, all that stuff is real with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that was like a D performance from the Lions, right? Like, objectively, 5 picks from your quarterback. They really didn't get the pressure on CJ Stroud that other people have been, at least in the first half, in terms of just like the heat that he's been under, especially when you have a backup at left tackle and the issues they've had in the interior. And we have a great graphic up here on the screen, Matt, because I don't know if you know, but you were the last quarterback to throw 5 interceptions in a game and lose. 2012 Cardinals.
And win.
And win. You want a lot of quarterbacks throw 5 interceptions and lose. You want to walk us through what happened that day against the Cardinals?
Well, it wasn't good, but we got the job done. Unlike Jared Goff, I didn't have like a Hail Mary or anything that was picked right before the half. All 5 of those, I think, were on me. But we hung in there, and it's 2012, so I think we ended up being the 1 seed in the NFC that year in the playoffs. And we had a good team around us. Again, tough, resilient group that just didn't give way. So, I mean, it happens, right? Sometimes you go out there and it's not your night, and the ball just ends up in the other team's hand, but you got to keep slinging it. And that's kind of what I love about Jared Goff, right, is the fact that it's not going to be perfect every week. It has been for them for like the last month, but, he didn't flinch. And that's what you have to do in this league, right? There's going to be times where it's not pretty, but you got to find a way to get it done. And I was impressed with that last night.
Yeah, Matt, and the way those receivers stepped up, I mean, obviously Laporta didn't finish the game, but he had some big chunk plays. Amon-Ra St. Brown, huge plays, conversions for them. And then I want to point out the offensive line for the Detroit Lions, who I rave about weekly. They had struggles early against this Texans front. Being on the road, being against a group that has 2 real rushers on the edge. I saw Penei Sewell getting the spin cycle early from Danielle Hunter. I think it was the first drive of the game. As an offensive lineman, how you start the game is how you think about the game for the rest of it. So if you get beat by an inside-out spin move, your head's spinning the whole night. So for Jared Goff, he's under pressure. The strength of that front was tested last night. Defensively, though, I got to give a lot of credit to that Detroit Lions run defense. They were nails all night, Matt.
Yeah, nails. I mean, you said it. The ability to run the football for Detroit and stop the run. We could talk about the game changing all we want, right? But it's still the same game that's always been played. You got to win on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And Detroit, seems to do it every week, right? And even when it's not like perfect, even when the beginning isn't like you mentioned, that them kind of struggling early on, they stick with it. You know, coming out of the half, the run game, and really even in the fourth quarter, Jahmyr Gibbs just kind of rolling down the sideline, you know, to that touchdown drive that they got it to within 3 points. It was impressive to watch. So this is a complete football team, you know, and, you know, they've proven they can go on the road, play some of the best teams in the NFL, not be at their best and get the job done.
And you can kind of feel it like a tide, like when you go to the beach and you know that the tide is going out, you know you're going to get more and more sand. Well, we got the feeling when those Lions came out of the locker room after the half, that tide was coming in. The Texans could feel it. They were rolling. Like you said, they stuck to their game plan. They were able to convert the way that they do, running the football, and that's really what ended up winning them the football game.
Yeah, Lions 8-1 now, second best record in the NFL, number 1 seed currently in the NFC. They're rolling. A team, though, going in the opposite direction in the same division, Chicago Bears.
Oh, boy.
Caleb Williams yesterday. It was ugly. 16 of 30, 120 passing yards.
9 sacks.
Fewest since week 1, and those 9 sacks, which he's now taken the most sacks in the NFL by anyone that were not blamed to the offensive line. A telltale sign of rookie struggles, in my opinion. What have you seen from Caleb of late and his struggles?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a regression. And, you know, it starts like if I was their coaching staff, I'm going in there in that quarterback room and I'm saying 3 things. Number 1, we have got to be better at the top of our drops, right? So at the top of that drop, you have either got to be hitching up into the pocket or at the very least, hitching in place. We cannot be losing ground at it. Number 2, I don't care if we take sacks, but we are not going to take sacks going backwards, right? We are going to attack the center of the pocket. We are going to get vertical. We're going to go towards the line of scrimmage. We are going to climb into that pocket. We are done taking sacks as we're just giving ground or trying to escape over the top, right? Big plays in the passing game most of the time happen when you climb in the pocket and then find a lane to get vertical and find a window to pass. And then number 3, I don't even care if we're throwing incompletions. We need the ball to come out on time, and we've got to trust our receivers, trust that we're going to throw our receivers open as opposed to not letting us see them get open. And that's kind of where I would go, because I think they're at the point right now where it's about his growth, right? It is about his growth. It's not about the results. It's not about the production. It's about what he can turn into. And I would keep it very clear for him, right? I would go in with tangible things that we say we're not going to do. We are not going to be sloppy at the top of the drop. We are not going backwards in the pocket, and we are throwing that ball on time, and we're throwing our guys open, even if we're throwing incompletions. I think that's the way for them to try and prove. Their offensive line has to play better. There's no doubt about it. Their receivers need to separate versus man coverage. They struggled doing that yesterday, but he's got to control his parts. And I think if we could see that from them, maybe you see some consistent improvement from him the next couple of weeks.
The one thing that I have really appreciated about Caleb Williams, and I know this is kind of like, just a participation trophy, but the way he has handled the media with all of the firestorm revolving around the Chicago Bears, their number 1 pick, obviously comparisons around the league. They just got beat by Drake May, the 3rd overall pick. The number 2 overall pick is a guy that's dominating right now in Washington. So I think he's handled the press really well. But to your point, you got to get the football out. As an offensive lineman, I couldn't stand protecting for a guy who's back there, pitching a tent and baking some weenies. You got to get the friggin' ball out. It makes everybody's job easier.
The thing I worry about, because scouting him coming out of USC and his 2 years there and the year at Oklahoma, the biggest thing I saw on tape was past his first read, just his eyes getting to there by the time the break happens. He's either stuck on his first read too long or he's coming off his first read too quick, and the timing just gets mismatched because, with pass concepts in the NFL, it's, once you get off the first, you need to get to the second by the time the guy's on his break or as he's getting to his break, and that's when you let it rip. And you just see consistently again and again, whether it's at USC or now as a rookie, that the timing is just never quite there. It never quite looks great. And to me, if, the consistent problem, the fact that it was already a problem coming out of college and we haven't seen improvement in it, man, that's worrisome, because that's how you operate a passing game in the NFL.
You read with your feet, right? Like, you play the quarterback position from the ground up. And so it starts with consistent rhythm in your drops, right? So you are hitting the top of your drop when you're supposed to be on that first progression, right? And it starts with rhythm and timing in the drop so that as you go 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, whatever that may be, it's your feet are clicking in rhythm and your eyes are following. And the thing I see too often is kind of either inconsistency in depth and rhythm to that drop, inconsistency at the top with the speed of the hitch. All of those things matter. The margin for error in this league is tiny. It's tiny in the passing game. And you have to be consistent with those things. And I would look, if I were the Chicago Bears right now, I would look at that and say, all right, these are tangible things we can time and practice, which is stuff that we would do, right? We would time these drops. We would freeze the film at the top of our drop to make sure that we were in sync with the play, right? And that was something we worked all the time, even into year 13, 14, 15. That's stuff that you cannot harp enough. And I think it starts there if you're the Chicago Bears.
So you talked about some of the coaching points that you would make if you were a position coach or a coordinator going into that meeting room this week. Now, if you're a player or if you're a fan of the Bears, what can your coaching staff do better to help get you to that point with your offense?
Well, number one, it starts like I was surprised with their game plan. And so in the first half, they had some 3-by-1 stuff where they had Rome Odunze on the backside, isolated, right? And first third down of the game, they go to him, he drops it, but he's short of the sticks. He's probably not going to get that first down. They then have the same concept up later on where he's on the backside and Caleb doesn't take it, right? He's got one-on-one, same thing, whether that's the drop on the first one or not. It wasn't until the second half that they put DJ Moore on the backside on those isolated routes. And in my opinion, DJ Moore is their best separator versus man-to-man coverage. So if you're going to isolate guys on the backside, and the Patriots played a ton of man on third down. If you're going to isolate somebody on the backside, that's where you put your guy, right? That's where you put your guy. On the other side, you have combination routes that are working to create rubs or whatever to help your guys get open. So I think there's a little bit too much isolation ball with what they're doing, specifically versus man-to-man coverage. But even so, Rome Odunze is a rookie too, right? And so I would put DJ Moore on that backside. What we used to call it is a yes-no. It's either a yes or a no. Pre-snap, you're either taking it or you're not. And if it's a no, you're back to the other side and you're working the combination route. So something they did a little bit in the second half. They got a completion for a first down to DJ Moore on it, but excuse me, I would kind of try and create some of those matchup problems. The other thing is there's a lot of isolation too, even with like Keenan Allen. It's a lot of choice routes. And for a young player, I know Keenan Allen's very good at it. Don't get me wrong. Like he's very good in those kind of breaking people off in those choice routes. But if you're trying to create rhythm for a young passer, those choice routes are really hard because you don't know exactly what you're going to get, right? And it leads to holding the ball maybe a little bit longer. So I might get away from that a little bit to try and get him into rhythm.